After the United States wins the war in Europe, they focus their attentions to the Pacific theater. This is the point where the United States will return battle onto the Japanese in their own homeland. After Pearl Harbor, Japan will attack the Philippines, Wake Island, and Guam within days of attacking the United States. In the beginning of the first 6 months of 1942, Japan rules the water, the land, and the skies. This shows the domination of the Japanese Army, military, and Air Force. General Douglas MacArthur is an American general. He is leading the forces in the Philippines. In March of 1942, he's ordered to leave the Philippines and has the famous saying, "I shall return." By April of 1942, the Japanese overrun the Philippines and Americans will surrender. The first battle of the Pacific we'll talk about is the Coral Sea. On May 7th, 1942, Japan is at the height of its power. This is the first battle in history that a naval battleship never fire upon each other. How, you may ask, this is possible? Because the United States and the Japanese will use airplanes launched from aircraft carriers to continue the Battle of Coral Sea. America will lose carriers and half of its planes. The Japanese will also lose carriers or damage a carrier and half of its planes. Ultimately, we see this as a draw, although Japan is not able to head to Australia. The United States are using Australia as a stronghold for the military to train men in the Pacific. This way of fighting, using airplanes as an opportunity to show American or Japanese strength, becomes central to the war in the Pacific. The second battle we'll talk about is Midway. This happens in June of 1942. Japan moves its way onto Midway Island and then onto the mainland. Notice on the right-hand side of your screen, you see a map of the Japanese military ideas and methods. Notice the arrows head towards Alaska and then also towards Hawaii. Midway is in between Japan and Hawaii, and this is necessary for the Japanese to have a stronghold. The United States naval cryptologists will crack the Japanese code so they know where the Japanese are going. This gives them an upper hand to fight the Japanese. As a result, we outship, outplan, outgun, and outman the Japanese because we will ambush them when they are refueling. This is the most vulnerable time to be attacking an enemy. Japan will lose more of their aircraft carriers than the United States, and this gives a turning point for the United States in the Pacific theater. Because they win at the Battle of Midway, the Japanese will never go on the offensive again. Because the United States cannot get their code cracked, the Japanese will not be able to find out where we're headed. The United States, on the other hand, is able to crack the Japanese code. The United States will use a strategy called island hopping. Island hopping means that you are going to selectively attack enemy islands and bypass others. This helps us cut off islands that are supplying reinforcements and then making the Japanese useless in their own islands in which they're habitating. The Battle of Guadalcanal is in the Solomon Islands. Notice there are other islands around there as well. This is on August 7th from February 9th, 1942 to 1943. This is one of the first major offensives of the Allied forces. This is the first time we see the United States Marines encounter jungle warfare. They're crossing rivers, swamps, vines, underbush, and unfortunately for the Marines, the Japanese are able to attack the United States because they are hiding in trees and underbush as opposed to out in the open like the Americans are. The U.S. will gain control of the waterways, and this is their first piece of Japanese territory, which is a huge turning point in the war. The Battle of Iwo Jima, one of the most famous battles in the Pacific. This goes from February 19th to March 26, 1945. This is the first attack on Japanese soil. After 3 days of battle, they're only able to advance 700 yards. If you look on the picture on the left, you notice a large mountain in which the Japanese build a system of underground tunnels and pathways and will attack Americans underneath the brush and hide instead of being out in the open, which is why it takes the Marines so long to advance. It is critical for them to take that mountain that we see in the left-hand picture because this is one of the highest points in Iwo Jima. This gives them an outlook and a viewpoint instead of being on the land or low side of the mountain. In addition, this is giving you one of the most famous war photos of all time, which is this picture here. This is a picture of American soldiers hoisting up the flag on the top of the mountain. Many of you have seen this before, and in fact there is a video, motion picture, called Flags of Our Fathers that depicts the raising of the flag on Iwo Jima. Approximately 25,000 Japanese will defend on Iwo Jima. At the end of it, there are only 216 left to surrender. Americans win this battle, but we lose about 7,000 men. This is the first time in history that any foreign flag is flown on Japanese soil as well. Okinawa is the last obstacle. This is mainland Japan, in which the United States need to invade in order to be on mainland Japan. Japan will lose half of its civilian population and over 100,000 soldiers. Americans will lose 50,000 soldiers. Out of those 50,000, 12,000 are either killed in or missing in action. Japanese see honor in war, and as mentioned during our video about Pearl Harbor, we see these kamikaze suicide planes being used. Kamikaze are planes that are loaded with bombs, and they are deliberately flown into massive military structures, whether it be an airplane, an aircraft carrier, military bases, or boats. Banzai, this is the attack in which soldiers are killing themselves after they've killed as many military enemies as possible. During this time period, we also see President Truman toying with the idea of whether he should be dropping the atomic bomb or not. What you're going to be doing today is going through on our class site and finding these sources to read through. These sources are giving you an opportunity to find out the pros and cons of dropping the atomic bomb, if President Truman made the right decision in an attempt to end American casualties and end the war sooner by dropping the bomb. Once you've read through all the sources, you are going to go into our resources and answer the essay question there. Please make sure that you cite these sources in order to prove that you understand the material that we've talked about. As always, any questions, please let me know.